Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Barca with Andy Lipson and Kenny Cepeda. And this episode is already on the third week of January. We should have done it maybe in December or the first week of January.
This is when it should be done.
All right. But this is our 2020 predictions episode for political predictions for this year, 2020. I know that this is the election year, so we'll be talking about that, but there are other predictions I hope that we can make, and I have some points that we can consider. So that's what we will be doing for this episode. Anyone want to start? Let's get it off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with the elections. And I actually want to start, because I've been saying for a long time that Trump's going to win. Trump's going to win the presidential election. And I am starting to have a different thought, even though I still, so I'm going to go for it. First, I want to start with who the Democratic Party candidate is going to be. And I'm going to make a prediction, but I want to hear from y'all about it as well. Okay?
Oh, I might have a different prediction.
That's the whole point. Then we can know that you're wrong. We'll have it here on record.
I was not wrong for the last predictions. Who was wrong on the plane?
Wait, we're starting with who is going to be the...
Who's going to be the Democratic Party candidate? Who they going among that weak ass field they have? Who is going to actually crawl to the finish line and be the person who's in the crosshairs of Trump? So I've been thinking about this because for a long time I've pretty much been just saying Biden, you know. But I think the easy choice and the safe choice for me to say, Biden's going to win out, the establishment's going to win, you know, they're going to get the person that they want. But I have been thinking about 2016 and how essentially Trump, you know, throttled the establishment Republicans using his populist message. And the world is a weird place right now. And nothing that we expect to happen is really quite happening, except that there's no working class struggle, and that seems to continue in this country for the most part. And I'll say more about that. But in terms of electoral politics and what's going on, just weird stuff is taking place. And so I think I'm going to make the prediction that Bernie Sanders is going to win the Democratic, is going to be the candidate. And that'll be the first prediction I'll make. And should I go to the president, or y'all want to say something?
Let's go one step. Yeah.
Okay. So Bernie, should I say anything more about that?
Yeah. Why do you think he has a chance now?
Because it's such a weak field. I don't even think their billionaire Blomberg or Steyer, what's that guy's name? Steiner or something. You know, the billionaires can't do anything at this point. And Biden, I think, he's so lame. And I don't think Hillary Clinton's going to come in and try to swoop in. I do think there's a potential for a brokered convention so that even though Bernie Sanders has enough of the delegates from all the combination of Super Tuesdays and all that kind of stuff, that they could try to pull something off. I just don't think they'll be able to do it this time because the Democratic Party just does. The establishment seems weak, doesn't seem to have an answer. They tried their little tricks with Warren and even Biden going after them. Every time they go after Sanders, he goes up in the polls. Clinton comes out and says he's totally unpopular, trying to torpedo his campaign, and all it does is make him more popular because these people are so hated. So when Hillary Clinton says you're not popular, then people like you more because Hillary Clinton is hated. So I think the establishment, two things. One, I think the establishment doesn't have many tricks in there to play out here, and two, I just think the electorate and the people in the United States are pissed, and they're just this economy is not working for them, war is not working for them, the environment's not working for them, and I think Medicare is a major issue, and I don't think anybody has. I think it's going to be a populist who's going to win, and I think there's going to be two populist candidates running against each other this time. So that's my prediction, which is surprising for me. But I'll go for it.
I have switched. I thought that before, now I think differently. I think that Joe Biden is going to win. The reason why I think is because he, no matter how the polls go, he keeps surging back and forth. I mean, as the top contender. And he is mostly accepted by the establishment and by, I think, most centrists. I think Bernie Sanders, unfortunately, will be undermined by the Democratic Party as he was in 2016. And he just keeps coming up, even if Elizabeth Warren surged at one point, Bernie Sanders surged at one point, but he just keeps coming up frequently. And so that is my prediction, that he is the beloved candidate of the Democratic Party, and he is going to win the primary. I don't think Elizabeth Warren will win. I really don't, and it's not because I think she isn't competent enough. I think that Amy Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren are women, and unfortunately the Democratic Party has shot themselves on their own foot using identity politics in a very strategic way for their own benefit and not for the benefit of actually liberating women institutionally from sexism. They've used it, as we had discussed in the last episode, for their own strategic political move in the next chess piece to be able to undermine another candidate.
Yeah.
And that is why identity politics isn't popular. And the reason why women, I think, are not right now, especially with Trump as well, using sexism, it is unfortunate, I think. And I think that's what Bernie Sanders was trying to tell Elizabeth Warren in 2018 in November in their private meeting, which is that in this very tenuous state, that women are being attacked. I mean, look at even the abortion debate right now. I'm not going into it, but I'm just saying that how much women are being attacked right now on those fronts. So I want to see a woman, but I don't want to see a woman in the Democratic Party. I want to see a woman leader in more of a socialist campaign, which I have in mind a few. But that's what I think, unfortunately, that Bernie Sanders will be undermined. Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, the nation is too divided for them. Trump will use that against him, and Joe Biden will win.
Do you think Joe Biden?
The Democratic primary.
Democratic. Okay.
Yeah,
he'll be the presidential candidate.
primary.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know. I can see. I kind of see the possibility of, I don't know who's gonna win, but either Bernie Sanders and Warren pulling together at the end, and that would be the ticket, trying to compete with Trump, because I still think identity politics still has a grip on people. I don't know. Again, I still see the strength of the Women's March to a degree, in people aligning.
Just last Saturday.
Yeah, people are aligning with behind Warren as a symbol of change for women. I definitely see Bernie Sanders still, despite all the shoving to the side or all the attacks, he still also has a presence in the Democratic Party, even though it's weaker, I think, than 2016. I do agree with you that there is the Democrats are being pushed to accept some more populist, less establishment candidate, because people are tired. Biden. I am surprised Bloomberg is actually running, and I don't quite know what to make of that. But so yeah, to me, I think that would be the ticket in some way or form. Sanders, Warren.
You think who's going to be the president? You think one's president, one's vice president, kind of thing?
Yeah.
You got to pick a president then.
For the primary?
And I think it's going to play out depending on how it looks at the end, as they're getting closer to election time.
Yeah, but this is prediction episode.
I think Sanders.
All right.
I think Sanders. But and then maybe we can jump into the prediction of the elections.
Yeah.
I still think Trump is gonna win. I don't. I think Bernie Sanders has lost a lot of momentum, especially since last time. I don't see the energy behind him that happened, in 2016. So I still don't see the economy still kind of wobbling along, even though economic indicators are signaling that something is coming. That's probably another
Yes.
prediction.
Yep.
But the fact is that it hasn't hit yet.
Right.
The elections are what, 9 months?
Yeah. Let's see. 10
Yeah, November. So
November. It's 9 months away.
Yeah. So and time is ticking, and it's gonna come sooner than we
10
think.
months. Wait. November. It's the beginning of November.
Yeah.
So it's 10 months. Okay.
And by the time a recession is officially called, or it's official, and it has to be 3/4 of negative, whatever. That's the technical definition of a recession. By that time, the elections have already are way underway, and so and I just see this division. People to the right, people to the left. And this, partisan approach to politics. And so what I hear on the left is we got to win at any cost. It's about winning. It's not even just about changing the system fundamentally. We have to win because we have to beat them. So I don't, so they'll jump behind anyone. And so that's the reason I think they will have to jump behind Sanders. But I do think it's a toss-up between Sanders and Warren at the moment.
All right. Do you want to go? Because
For the
presidential, like November.
the November elections, I unfortunately look at history, and very few presidential candidates have won over an incumbent, and Donald Trump this will be her second year, and so he most likely will win as an incumbent the presidential election. And if they don't win, it's because of two things: the economy and the amount of deaths that they have for a war. And sometimes, like George Sr. Bush didn't win a second term because he just wasn't connected to the people. I mean, he was just not at all just connected to his constituents. But that's how I feel about Trump, that he just is so, I don't know, he's so simple-minded, he's so able to connect. It's his strategy. He has a way to connect with people. It's a populist. Yeah. And he criticizes what it's on everyone's mind, but people don't say, like political correctness, like, what people feel. They don't know how to sort of deal with the things like immigration, so they don't know how to place those misplaced resentment when it's really about the economy and about globalization and austerity measures, and just there's a lot of things. But I think people see what's right in their face, and they see some new people in their community, and they think, what's going on? This must be the cause, right? Because people place immigrants as the bully person. So I think that Trump really used the most perfect thing that Republicans weren't using, which is the immigration issue, and that is to say this is really the issue that's going on. And most Republicans sort of said it, but in coded words, and he said it out blatantly, like what's her name, Coulter?
And
Coulter.
Ann Coulter, who has been talking about it for a long time, that she was trying to tell Republicans, take up this issue because it's a very popular issue amongst a lot of people.
Because people are mad, like the working people, and that's when we talk about identity politics, and
and using racism.
Yeah, and telling someone that's struggling, you have privilege, and using these blanket statements, and what do you expect? And so then and I mean, I don't know if we're continuing.
I want to go with my prediction on the. I want to say something about the president. Yeah, because if Eduardo is right and Biden wins the Democratic primary, then Trump's definitely going to win in my mind.
Yeah.
Okay. But if Sanders wins, first off, they're both weakened. Both Sanders and Trump were populists in 2016, and both of them excited their base. Neither of them excite their base in the same way. Both of them have been exposed at various levels as frauds, and that's true. Like Trump did not drain the swamp. Trump did not pull out of he's not pulling out of the Middle East. Trump, I don't think there's going to be the same excitement at the base for Trump because he's much more of an establishment figure now. Because he's basically been, I believe he's been collected, and I think people increasingly see that the state has gotten their hooks into him, and he's less of a figure who's challenging the establishment and is more embedded within it. Similarly, I think Sanders has been weak because he keeps on backing down in the face of big business, of Biden, of Clinton, and he's vacillated on positions, whether it's the war sometimes. What was the other? I can't think of the other ones right now, but he's been wishy-washy on things. But one thing that he has not been, I know the one where he talked about the political revolution, right? He's given up that line and actually said, "Oh, I'm with Obama. We don't need a revolution," But I think this issue about Medicare for all, which is where Warren went into the tank when she went away from that. I think that's going to be a big issue, and I think that the hunger at the base of the American electorate for somebody who's different is enough that a person like Bernie Sanders could I think not just win the primary but could win the presidency. But the problem, there's a few problems, and this is where I think Trump will win. Even though I do think if there was a strong left populist, they should be able to beat Trump in this country in 2020. But they won't for a few reasons. One, the establishment, the Democratic Party establishment and the capitalist class establishment is going to like kind of spit up a hairball if he became the president. I mean, if he became the candidate, and they're going to have a tough time getting behind him. So he's going to be like Trump was. There's going to be never Sanders people within the Democratic Party who will refuse to support him. And even though there's a set of people who want to go with him. And I think Sanders is going to have a tough time with that. Furthermore, I think Trump is a brawler politically, and I think Sanders is weak. I think Sanders is, to me, he seems like a person who just flops over like a fish. And I unfortunately don't, well, it's not even unfortunate because I think both of them are frauds. I'm just saying, I think he's just going to get pounded by Trump and made to look silly and weak. And I think that may mobilize Trump's base enough so that even though I think Sanders should be able to beat him, I do think Trump will win. I will say, listening to conservatives who support Trump, the person they're most concerned about winning the Democratic primary is Bernie Sanders. But I just think Bernie Sanders' character is weak, and I think his politics are weak, unfortunately, like his belief in them, and is willing to fight for them. And even though I think he should win, if he won the Democratic primary, he should be able to become president, given the desire for that kind of change. I guess I'll have to say at the end of the day, I think Trump's going to win.
I want to point out that I actually agree with you that I think maybe Elizabeth Warren, for Kenny, yeah. I think that Elizabeth Warren would be considered for like vice presidency for Bernie Sanders. That, and the second thing is, I've wondered why Trump doesn't really go after Bernie real hard. He even sometimes defends him. In 2016, he said, look what they did to Bernie, for like the Democratic Party, they backstabbed him. And he kept talking about that at his rallies, like, look what they did to Bernie. And then this time around, he's talking about, I don't think that Bernie Sanders said that about Elizabeth Warren. I saw him say that at a rally. Yeah. And it's always interesting how it always seems like he defends him in some ways. I think he sees him not as and I think maybe political strategists have told Trump, there are people who would vote for you and would vote for Bernie as Sanders as well. So don't go after Bernie too hard because you might actually be able to win some of those, which they have. I know for a fact because my farmer, she told me that many people were voting for Bernie Sanders, but they were disillusioned when he lost, so they voted for Trump. So this is in Dixon, here in California.
Yeah.
Not too far from here.
Yeah.
So I know that maybe that might be one of the reasons why he doesn't go after Bernie as hard.
I think that's the big reason. And can I say something? I don't see Warren and Sanders as ever being on the same ticket because I think they are, like I said, I think Warren is put there as to shadow Sanders and to weaken his candidacy, but unfortunately she hasn't been able to do that. So she would never be his running mate because she's part of she's part of the Democratic Party establishment trying to do a takedown on Bernie.
I don't know. I still think that she would capture, some of like the feminist, identity politics type of votes. And again, they're, at least, like you said, they've shadowed each other. So at least on visuals, they don't look that far apart. And yeah, they had disagreements and they'll pull the whole, oh, look, we've put our differences aside, to beat Trump. And, but ultimately, I don't think the left is, has the energy, in this case, the Democrats have the energy to, and motivation to jump behind the Democratic Party to beat Trump. I do think that the right is way more mobilized. I think Trump keeps that fire stoked up. And there may be some people that, see him as an establishment person, but I don't know. I feel like it's about us versus them, politics.
He still has those big rallies.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think, and he's an orator of sorts. He's kind of, I see Obama in him in a way. It's just in a different way, but he rallies people, he moves people. And he keeps that energy going. Where on the Democratic side, I don't see anything like that. And the party's so dismantled.
Yeah.
That I would even say, like, maybe, who knows? Maybe what's his name, Bloomberg, will come sweeping in, late in the game. And because I've seen people ask me questions. I mean, like, again, it's not representative of the nation.
Right.
But I see how this guy Bloomberg is bombarding, like, the Spanish channels, Telemundo, Univision, bombarding everywhere that I look, Bloomberg, and I don't see anything from Sanders. And it's, again, this whole notion that California might be a left-leaning state.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to Hillary, right? Like, where she discarded, the whatever coal workers, right? She never visited them.
Yeah.
So she lost some of those states.
Is Bloomberg running on, I'll give you $1,000 if you vote for me?
No, he's running on... like basically a proven, politician that cares about the people. These are the Spanish, or providing jobs. That he's provided well-paying jobs for people in New York and blah blah blah. And so that's the spiel in Spanish.
Okay.
And I think it's very appealing to people, to a lot of Latino voters.
The Senate.
So Democrat, let's see, I'm saying Sanders, Biden,
Yes.
and we're all saying Trump.
Yes, it looks so.
I'm saying Trump will win.
Yeah.
Okay.
Victory, yeah.
All right.
I mean,
No.
just to me, it's also symbolic of what's going on worldwide. This is more of that march to the right, the constant drums beating to that side, and
That's true.
Maybe that's my next prediction. Like that. That movement, the nationalist drum beats to the right are moving steady, and like I was just reading another one in Italy, Salvini, another right wing winning like some historically left, center left, strongholds in Italy, and we know all over Europe, we know Latin America, there is no disruption of this movement at the moment. So that's my next prediction. That movement is going to continue. There is nothing holding it back. Because
go ahead.
because of the failure of the left too. Again, to provide answers and being anemic and so people are disillusioned and we've seen this in the past again.
Well, I definitely feel like, okay, so in the United States, we've had we've had an uptick in class struggle in the last 2 years, because there's been a historic low level of strikes in this country for almost the last 15 to 20 years. And it got super low in the last decade. But in the last 2 or 3 years, it has made a definite uptick. Still well below what it was in the 30s or the 60s and the early 70s, but an uptick. So that uptick is going to flatten flatten back down below to the elections. But I do think, so in Europe, I do think we're going to see more things like we're starting to see in France.
Well, let's before we go there, let's try to go in order. Before I think we're trying to concentrate on the USA, right?
Well, because he's talking about class struggle, and he's talking about Latin America.
Yes.
And I think that in the same way, I don't fully agree. Well, I do believe that the right in power is going to face the same problems that the left. So the socialists go to power in South America, and they expose themselves as frauds. Mm-hmm. That's going to happen to the right as well. The problems that capitalism makes for people are still going to be those problems. And even though they're going to use racism and divisions and things like that, and it's going to sell to get them in power, year, 2 years, 3 years. So I do think that there's going to be something playing out. It's not going to play out necessarily this year, although I do see it more playing out in Europe right now than South America. But I see Europe as the leading edge of a rise in class struggle that's a result of no answers being provided from the right, from the left, and no real answers being provided from the right. Although I do see the continued dissolution of things like the European Union will be taking place, so I'll leave it at that.
The Senate. Let's focus on the Senate.
Okay, that'd be the U.S. Senate.
The USA.
Do you want to weigh in on this part, and then you can go back to the Senate?
Yeah, I will come. Yeah, I will.
You should do it now, and then we'll go back to the Senate. You can take.
You were talking about global politics now.
Yes,
I think
yes.
if you want to talk about like Brexit, for example.
Just come on, just join us. Join us in this episode, Eduardo. You can be part of this.
I am joining. I am looking at the timing. The global.
And then you can come back to you can do the Senate because.
I think Brexit will happen, unfortunately, and I think that more. Unfortunately, I think that there are a lot of cyber attacks and cyber warfare that is happening right now, and there is an entire episode that I encourage everyone to watch on Democracy Now! Where they just talked about people who worked for Cambridge Analytica. They interviewed people there, and they also interviewed a person who did this documentary film on cyber attacks, and they go into details that I'm not going to talk about right now. But the point is, these cyber attacks have been tested in African nations as well as in Latin America, and as well with partnerships with cyber attacks from Israel. So there are lots of already proxy cyber wars going on, and there are changes in election outcomes because of them. So I do really believe that this is going to make it harder for future elections anywhere in the world. And and I want to correct something that I had said some time ago when I was in Spain and we did the episode, is that I do support people who are for Brexit only if it's not something that is being inundated and persuaded by some cyber warfare trying to persuade people for racist ideas. I think that if people want to Brexit because of European Union is not looking out for their interests as the working class, then that's different. But if it's for racist ideas that are being persuaded for, and they did this like different personality tests that people are either trying to persuade them out of fear or trying to persuade them because of egotistical reasons, whatever it is, then I don't go for that, because then how can you really get an outcome that is authentic if people are really being persuaded by just psychological warfare? So anyhow, going back is this, Brexit is going to happen, and France will have another Macron, which is a capitalist, extreme capitalist, disguised as a left-wing person, trying to look out for the interest of the rich, as he is now doing. And in Mexico, unfortunately, I think people are going to be very disillusioned with AMLO. But I think Latin America really looks to AMLO as the leader in the left.
To hold out for the left.
Yes.
The last left.
Because there's so many turnings
To the right.
to the right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm just curious about this notion, that
Cyber stuff.
the cyber
We should
stuff, 'cause
discuss
I-
another episode. Not
because I think
I think, yeah.
I don't agree with that either.
Yeah, because manipulation has always happened.
Exactly.
but not at this
information.
extent. There
Yes.
has really been.
Well, about television, and
Always
newspapers.
no, it's
Yeah.
different
And,
this time.
I don't know. I find
This is more catered to a specific group. This is.
But that's what I'm
different
saying. But not everyone. For example,
Well, let's-
I know people that don't watch, that pay for
That's
no
right.
commercial YouTube.
Yeah.
So they're not always exposed, and that's all they watch. So my point is that I think we have to be careful with that
Yeah.
line of argument, because I think it undermines the anger of people. The
Yes.
fact that they're pissed because they've been disillusioned, their economic situations is not improving, on the contrary, they're struggling, and so they do, and I agree, they are more prone to be manipulated in some way by lies, as always. But we are undermining the fact that they're pissed
Less
for genuine
prone,
reasons.
less prone to be
Well,
manipulated.
I think
that's
that
the
this
whole
is
point.
up for debate for another episode.
Okay.
Another episode. We're
Yes.
doing 2020 predictions right now.
Yes, but
So.
yeah, but when he cited it as a Democracy Now! Point, I already knew it was horse shit.
This was an interview from Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica is not
That's
either
double
Democracy
horseshit.
Now or here or there.
They're two
It's
great
neither
taste
here nor
taste
there.
taste together.
Cambridge Analytica is specifically was a specific right-wing group working for undermining lots of left-wing or left-centrist.
That's why we have to control the internet.
No, I'm not saying that. I did not say that.
But
That's
that
not
also
my,
comes
no. But I'm saying that we have to acknowledge it, and this is not something to be discussed right now.
And because I've had that opinion too, but
Yes.
I think it does undermine, the anger of people, and
And the independence of that anger, it's coming out, and it's not able to be controlled. That's why Trump got elected.
This is up for debate on another episode.
All right, yeah, you're right. All right.
All right.
Eduardo's right. Eduardo's right. Enough of this.
Just one last point.
Okay.
That can piggyback on Russiagate, Russiagate, that whole
Yes,
Cambridge Analytica,
oh,
and so,
God.
and again, and I think that's part of the lack of, respect for people that voted for Trump or conservatives, the working people, that their anger is not being heard, and liberals have done this for a long time, and so
Yes.
there is the result.
Yes.
There is the result, because we keep using this stuff that they don't know better, that we know better than they do as liberals, progressives, and so and we're gonna keep getting those results.
For our listeners and viewers, I have some agreements with some elements of what both of you are saying, but I'm not going to indulge because right now we're not concentrating on this.
So you do believe that Democracy Now! Is horseshit?
I did not say that.
Oh, okay.
I did not say that.
Wasn't sure which
So
one.
I'm just not going to indulge right now. Let's continue.
Next,
Senate.
The Senate.
Yes.
I do think that the GOP will maintain hold of the Senate. I think it's right now.
Currently, they have the Senate.
Yes,
but they don't have the Congress.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're talking about
they don't have the House of
Republicans.
Representatives,
Yeah,
yeah.
they will hold control over the Senate in the USA. That's my prediction. Anyone else?
This one I don't. I will say that shit. That's a good. Okay, I haven't had to think about this one, but I will. Say I think the Republicans hold the Senate, and I actually think because I think Sanders. If I'm going to say Sanders is going to win, I think that's going to be hard for the kind of candidates that will be running as, and I don't think there's a base to. He's not going to have a coattails that's going to draw people in. I think Democrats are going to lose people in the House as well. So it could be a Republican House and a Republican Senate. I think it's a possibility with Bernie Sanders running, because that's the nightmare scenario for the Democrats. And I think the people who are these strategists, they at least I do believe that they know what they're talking about when they talk about how these things play out.
Well, they look at this from history as well. Right?
Yeah,
So
and they just know how the polls go. And so this one, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see that. So I haven't had time to think about it, but I think if what I'm thinking is going to happen, then I think what that means is either the Democrats lose the House or they lose a lot of seats, and they almost lose the House.
Yeah.
Do you think Ocasio-Cortez is going to win again?
Yeah, she doesn't have a very resistant. There aren't two people who are going to compete against her. She's very much liked. She's a popular candidate. People just will stay away from trying to compete with her.
Now, there's people primarying her right now, but I do think she's raising a lot of money outside of her district.
Yeah, I'm curious because I've seen like Republican candidates that check the boxes. Like I've seen I don't know their names to be honest, but I've seen like like a black woman that wants to run against her. I also saw like a Latina and quote her actually happens to be a Guatemalan migrant, legal migrant, and they're using this again check boxes.
Yeah.
A legal migrant woman from Guatemala. So they learn the tricks. The Republicans know what's up, and they're gonna and I happen to think that most like Latinos are actually have conservative values, and
yeah,
so,
they do actually. When I went to Miami, híjoles. They
Super Bowl.
were very I just realized it was a whole different section. Yeah,
but I mean, but Miami is also like just a quick note. It's like a microcosm of the ruling class of Latin America. That's where the kids go to party. That's what the elite go live.
Well, it's also like the difference between, I realized, but I mean, I knew this intuitively, but the difference between other like Central Americans, like Nicaraguans or Venezolanos or Cubans, the rich immigrated to the USA. The rich in Mexico stay. It's the poor who leave Mexico. The rich stay, and they have visas and tourist visas everywhere. They can travel anywhere and have 2 homes in 2 different countries. Yeah. But the poor leave Mexico. So the rich in so-called communist or socialist countries, they leave. Mm-hmm. So of course they have more conservative values. Mm-hmm. So I have encountered lots of Cubans who are completely against Bernie Sanders.
And some of them feel like their stuff got taken.
Yeah. So people who don't are not okay with Maduro.
Cuban Americans, Nicaraguan Americans.
And I was just.
But there are plenty of people. There's a whole wave of poor people from Central America.
Of course. But I'm just saying, in Florida, the old time. Well, people are from a certain generation. Are very conservative. Yeah. I have found.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And Mexicans have constantly immigrated. The poor have mostly immigrated. And the rich have always stayed, which is I found the difference in just that interesting.
Anything else to say?
For the USA Supreme Court, we have to say it. I hate that this country only has lifetime appointees. In Mexico, I've already said this in a different episode. We have a Supreme Court justice, magistrates, but they're 15 years in power, And here, in as a judge, and here it's a lifetime appointee. So you have. Poor Ruth Ginsburg, she's holding out as long as she can, and that's because of this lifetime appointee thing you have here.
Yeah.
Which in Mexico we have 11 justices, here you have 9, and in Mexico 15 years, and here you have for life. No wonder people are trying to hold out as much, or threatening with retirement.
But what's your prediction?
That she unfortunately will eventually naturally have to pass away.
You're predicting that she passes away this year?
I think maybe she will not be able to be in full capacity to be able to continue being a judge.
I think that's possible.
Maybe not death, but she's going to have to step down eventually.
Yeah, I can see that.
So that's when I predict.
Yeah.
And if not, some one of them are going to retire.
Yeah.
And he's going to. So my prediction is that Trump will have an appointee this year.
Another one. Right?
That makes some sense. Yeah,
he's had two. Now he'll have a third.
Yeah. I can see that. I like that prediction.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
Anyone of you two?
Another prediction?
Well, do you think that that's what happen?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
All right.
Kenny?
Yes, I buy into that.
Yes.
Any Supreme Court...
can we go on to something else that's interesting?
Dios mío. Who rules here? We know now.
So here's a question I have. The Middle East. The U.S. is not pulling... The U.S. is not pulling out of the Middle East. And I think Israel and Saudi Arabia will become much more... I think this year Israel is going to become much more of a weapon in the Middle East. They've always been one, but I think a much more aggressive weapon, particularly in relationship to Iran. And I think there's a chance that if Iran stays on a path where they're like, forget y'all, we're just going to, develop our nuclear weapon. I think there's a chance that they get one of their facilities gets hit.
Israel.
By Israel or the United States. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think I think Iran the Iran regime has been in some trouble since this whole stuff went down with Soleimani, and I think it's put the United States on a front foot to push them into a box. I think I hate to say it, but I think Trump got away with one.
Yeah, he did.
And the United States and the U.S. ruling class got away with one, and so they pulled it out again. And so I think they'll be emboldened to act recklessly, and so I can see them doing such a thing.
I think that Netanyahu will stay in power, and I have sort of something hopeful for some reason. I don't like to voice speculations like this, but I think that there won't be in Trump era Third World War. I don't really think so. I have seen people literally people, I'm talking about like Iran not really go on the offense here or the defense really well. I mean, even the last missile attack that they did was an accident on the plane, and the other one on the military facilities was warned before they attacked.
Okay,
and
sure.
That's very diplomatic, but trying to still show they have some power, no? And I think North Korea as well won't do that as well. And I just, those things make me think that everyone is playing very carefully around this, and they're just trying to bluff.
So
There's a lot of bluff going on.
So is the escalation, quote unquote, of those tensions you're saying have fizzled out?
I don't think they're fizzling out. I think that they just won't escalate to an entire war. I really don't think that it will, given that I've seen that they haven't reacted in the same way.
I don't think the United States is, but I agree with you that the U.S.'s targets have not been as responded as, but I don't think the United States has backed down.
Right. Yeah.
Because I think to the extent that their opponents did not back down, the U.S. has stepped in, putting more troops in the region actually, and continuing to bomb certain elements of areas of Iraq. They were going after the Iraqi mobilization force that was supposedly part of the Iranian attempt to kind of curry favor within Iraq, and all this whole thing about kicking the United States out of Iraq. Where did that go? It's nowhere. So. Apparently, the United States has been able to once again.
Yeah, the USA is a little unpredictable for me, but I think that world leaders have been careful, and that's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's wrong, and hopefully I'm right.
Right.
Not because I hope that Eduardo's right, but because for the world not to continue to go into World War III.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I do think that it has that. Escalation has died out. I don't know how much of that was calculated, and but definitely Trump, no pun intended, got the better deal. And so I think I don't see right now the prospect of escalations for a world war of sorts. Obviously that can change within weeks, as that showed, depending on the response of in this case Iran. I do think the US is cemented its grip in the region, because they've shown how bold they can be and they can come out on top. And I ultimately think that this is going to play in favor of Trump in the elections, just bringing it back to this. And because he can play that very much about being anti-war. And because he's not engaged in a major conflict of his own making, at least in public opinion. So he can definitely pull that card. And but so I think the U.S. is better positioned now.
I mean, I'll be clear. I am not saying that the tensions are lowered in that region. I would just say that the U.S. has been successful at getting the people that they're trying to put pressure under to back down. But I think the tensions are still very great. This whole impeachment thing is about Russia and about U.S. imperialism and about U.S. projecting power and how to do that. So that project is not going away. And like we all said, if you think Brexit's going forward, the national split up is still going to continue, which means the U.S. has to position itself to come out on top. Because while I don't think there's going to be an economic collapse or a recession this year, all economists know that there's something coming.
Yeah,
I can't predict one this year, but I'm not predicting that will be this year, because it would, if it does happen this year, it scrambles the eggs of any election we're talking about in the United States. So then things get really unpredictable, and I don't know how to make a prediction in the context of a complete, like a repeat of 2008, and most economists that I've heard say that the next one is going to be worse than 2008.
Now I think speaking further with that is that I think global poverty will continue rising, and that the gap between the rich and the poor will continue widening in the world.
Yes.
If that is happening, it's going to happen in increasingly an alarming state. So I think that, just to add to that.
And I think that from that, this whole, especially coming to election time, the politicization of like the migrant caravan, refugees, all this stuff is gonna
Worsen.
It's definitely gonna worsen. I mean, I think we are at the beginning of something, not just on this year, but in the next, years to come. But definitely gonna see that more in the news again, because it happened in 2016, and I think it played in favor of Trump, into the whole nationalist, border security and border rhetoric, and concerns of working people who feel like they're already struggling, and if more immigrants are coming, they might, they're gonna struggle even more. And so, I mean, at least from Central America, from what I know, having been whatever, but having roots there, from Central America, this is just the beginning. I mean, there's an area called the Dry Corridor in Central America where basically it's drought, and it's pushing people like out. And as it is, there is little prospects for jobs in the region because of capitalism, historical colonialism with the U.S. And so more and more people are gonna come, and they're gonna have to fight more, obviously militarized borders. The southern border of Mexico with Guatemala, El Salvador itself also.
There was a recent caravan that has happened in Mexico in the south right now, and the Mexican immigration officers were really brutal.
Under a socialist government, right? Like under a socialist president.
Well,
and
Eduardo's friend Hamla.
But no, but that's the other thing. That's the U.S. is gonna continue to exert their pressure. Because I think that's one thing Trump has achieved, that he's been able to isolate every country and make them bend their knee. And I think that's part of the taking on China. That was part of showing these countries, you can't take on us. If we can take on China, how can you take on us economically? And so that's why every single president, the Mexican president has bowed down, the Guatemalan new president, he's a correctional officer that just emboldened the use of guns to its police. That was his first speech taking office last week, actually. He said, the state, it's been too long. The police haven't had the support of the state. The state has your support if you use your guns. That's the mentality of the people governing Central America now. It goes from Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. They're all bowing down to the U.S. And there's nothing they can do.
One other, maybe last one I wanted to bring up was China and North Korea.
I was going to go there as well.
You want to say something about that?
Well, I feel like, well, maybe I think it's different, but I was going to say that their surveillance state is not going to be any different from surveillance state that we have here in the USA and the Americas. I think it will increase. I think that surveillance state, we already have it. I'm just saying it's going to be more facial recognition, more cameras on the streets, more police force working with social media as they are. But I'm just saying it'll be more openings for that, and it'd be more clear that they are not going to hide it. And that's what I mean. It's already happening, but it's going to have even more alliance between the tech companies and the government.
I definitely agree. That wasn't going to go in that direction, but I definitely agree we're going to see the growth of artificial intelligence usage, facial recognition, surveillance, saying things around your computer and then suddenly getting commercials from those things on your phone, you know. So
recorded at home.
Yeah, so I agree with that. I don't know if you want to say something, because I want to say something about North Korea and China geopolitically.
Oh, you want to talk, yeah.
But do you want to say anything about the surveillance stuff?
I mean, I agree. I mean, it's just gonna keep going. Is that, you know, it's been happening. It's gonna continue to happen.
Yeah.
And that this idea that, at least some years ago, I think that the tech, you know, industry was like this enlightened group of capitalists.
Or that would be a pathway to liberation.
Yeah, exactly. It's out the window, you know, and and that's why if we just make a connection, it bothers me when we're talking about, again, censorship, right? Giving these companies the power to decide, you know, and ultimately being following the powers of any, you know, government,
right?
Really, for whatever use they have. Right. And we already know that they can manipulate laws to, you know, to repress dissent, you know, and they can accuse you of whatever. And so it's not you know, it's a very bleak future, but
outside of revolution or pushback, social, I mean, unless there's something like that happens, then that's the way this stuff is headed. And it's not. Technology is not going to liberate us unless workers get control of that technology. Yeah. Which means they have to have control of their own state, and they have to get rid of, you know, corporations. So, what I was going to say about North Korea, is that good? Okay. Go ahead. What I was going to say about North Korea and China is I think that U.S. will continue to make overtures with North Korea, even you know, play this game like North Korea sometimes seems to be getting out of their little, you know, going too far. But I believe that the U.S. will continue to try to make overtures towards Kim Jong-un and bring him into the fold. And at the same time, I do believe that the trade war, the trade stuff, and the divisions between the United States and China are going to get worse. So I think those are the two things that will, because I think every time the United States is trying to make things difficult with China, it leads them to make more overtures with a major Chinese ally of North Korea. So that's something I expect to continue at pace. I don't think there's going to be some sort of trade deal reached where there'll be a détente. I do think those divisions and things will continue to get worse between China and the United States.
Another prediction. I think that we made an episode, it wasn't very popular because it was a little heavy loaded with a lot of science. But if you remember, for our viewers and listeners, you can check out our CRISPR episode. And this one was very, thank you, Andy, for providing a lot of the science-based explanations. But I think that CRISPR will have will be the increasing amount of gene editing. I think it's already happening secretly with humans. That's how I think of this. But I think there will be more exposure for people, mostly rich people, accessing gene editing for babies to have certain inherited traits.
Genetically modifying embryos and things like that. Okay.
Yeah, I think that this technology will continue now, be more widely, not this year, but the beginning stages of cracking up. It's cracking some scientists to finally accept that there's no way to leash this.
Right.
It's my
Put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah,
Yep.
I really. Maybe it's not going to immediately happen, but scientists are just going to eventually say, you know what, it's already out of the bottle.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it for me.
I'm trying to see, and I think that global carbon emissions, if some people believe that it exists or not, but
I do think cars put out carbon dioxide. I think companies put out more carbon dioxide.
But I think that more environmental destruction,
Yeah.
it will worsen, and I do think that.
And I think the capitalists will
last-
continue to do nothing about it.
This
except
last
stupid meetings.
COP conference in Madrid was of no use, no service.
Like the last
there was
20
no
something.
outcome.
Except that it seems to more legitimize the carbon
Yes.
trading.
Yes. Yes. Well, I want to focus on that. Basically, there are no compromises that the government will do to try to lower or to make any concessions for the environment. That's just the fact. As long as, and we had an episode as well that I want our listeners and viewers, maybe we can put that episode where basically what the environment is going through with so much environmental crisis, with fires and forests and agriculture and toxic lands and toxic waters and plastic everywhere, it is just never going to cease under capitalism. That's just it. So it just won't, because everything is profit driven and governments are not willing to even change a little bit that is going to make any difference. There is no difference under a capitalist system. So I think that will just worsen.
Yeah.
Is that it? Anyone
Other
else
than-
have? I'm trying to look
I
for more.
predict that Kenny will be more involved in these episodes in the future of what's left.
He has to come for the cyber attack warfare episode, since apparently you two have something to say,
We do have something to say about it.
which I don't know if that was.
I also predict that the socialist train will not get moving, even though people will think that Bernie Sanders is part of the socialist train. That is not the socialist train. That is the socialist train going over the cliff.
But I do think.
But Eduardo, since the socialist train is not moving, Eduardo will not be joining the socialist non-moving train this year.
But I do think there are more people waiting for that train. You know, maybe one or two that I may.
Eduardo's waiting for it. There was a guy right here waiting
I'm
for
Well,
it.
there's others. And
I play my cards carefully.
well, just gotta
Blue card, red card.
Just gotta convince them to push.
Yes, yes.
You know, but if being at the station I think is better than not being there at all.
Yes, thank you.
And I predict that I will be enjoying another year of episodes of what's left. So that's my prediction, at least.
All right, good. Yes. So, yeah, we'll have another episode. We already said what the next episode will be.
What is the next episode? I think it might be you reporting from France.
Yes, actually, you're right. We should do that one, and then we should do this cyber attack.
I'm also going to Europe. I'm going to Spain and Italy.
When's that?
In April, early April.
That's
but,
a long-
whatever.
long way
But
away,
I
yeah.
went.
Okay,
Pointers,
good.
so we'll talk. That's another
Okay,
discussion.
good. Yes. Okay. I can give you lots of pointers. How to live very cheaply in Europe.
And you can get your own reports on the ground to find out what's really going
I'm
on.
gonna be a tourist. No, but I'm always watching. Obviously.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for joining us. For our listeners and viewers, you can check us out on any of our 5 platforms on Bitchute, Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes Podcast, and YouTube. Please.
I will say one thing about Bitchute, though.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What?
Bitchute is making it very difficult to upload these episodes. So
Why?
I don't know. I try to contact them. The episodes sometimes upload, sometimes they don't. So if you don't see an episode on Bitchute, it's not because we're not trying to put them on there. It's because they're getting hung up in processing and not loading. So
Yeah.
they're on there or they're not. But you know, we want to get off of YouTube a little bit because YouTube is completely taken over by Google and whatever. But
And it's
Bitchute is
only working through algorithms.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
but Bitchute is not necessarily working out so well either.
And I thought that was more of a free
Yeah, that's what the idea
access
But I've been having
library.
problems.
YouTube?
Bitchute.
Oh, Bitchute.
Yeah. So, just to let, but you know, I appreciate you saying these things. It's just I want to let people know if you don't see those episodes on Bitchute, if you happen to be into that, it's just because we're having processing problems.
Well, I'm even appreciative that you tried to load them there, Andy, and it's all thanks to Andy. I should put in the credits. No, really, I do appreciate you doing it. I really do.
The technical innovation. Remember that?
Exactly.
All right, so you can subscribe, rate, review, and best of all, share with your family and friends. Thank you, and check us out for our next episode.
Yep. See you next week.
See y'all.
Ciao. Did you read what that one person said?
No, I looked for it. Is it on YouTube or?
It's on YouTube.
I couldn't. I can find the comments for some reason. Well, I looked at my phone. Maybe I had to look on like.
Oh.
I don't know.
He said,
You have an
"Speak up
application.
more." He wants to hear your. The people want to hear your voice.
Wow.
All right.
They never say anything about
But I said, "Look, we've been doing this 80 episodes. He's on his 4th or 5th, so give him a break."
Okay.
The world has had enough of them.
Go ahead, Eduardo.
I think I spoke some, but I'm speaking now.
That's as loud as you're going to talk.
Well, I hope that I don't have to scream.
This is the world of entertainment. You have to project your voice sometimes.
All right.